this thought running through my head, kind of like a bad penny. And it first dawned on me, I don't know, several months ago, and keeps coming back over and over again. I went to seminary a few years ago now, and I loved my seminary experience. I went to a decent seminary, and just so that you kind of understand where I'm coming from, a decent seminary, a top-tier seminary to me is one that does not indoctrinate, but actually educates. And I think the difference is that when you're in an educational seminary environment, a lot of your preconceived ideas, well, they at least get beat up if they don't get torn apart. And I think that's actually a good thing. So there's a deconstruction process. In fact, for a lot of people, you spend your first 3 years kind of deconstructing all of the beliefs, or at least a majority of the beliefs that you had, and then you get one year to actually put them all back together again. It's an odd deal, but I think that's good, because then you're in the reconstruction process when you're released into the wild, so to speak. And I had a lot of my preconceived ideas challenged at the minimum in seminary, and I am so grateful for all of that. But the two things that I did not learn. One was I didn't learn who I was. I didn't have any sense of identity. And secondly, I didn't know how to hear the Lord when He's speaking, because my fundamental belief is that God is always speaking to us. And whether you call it tuning in or listening for God or learning His voice, or choose your language, but I didn't learn how to do that other than decent Bible study. Okay, so I want to put that one on the table, because there are some folks who believe that God only speaks through His Bible, and I think that's the primary way He speaks, but I don't think it's the only way. And so I think you have to be careful. If you think your discipleship is a Bible study, you're mistaken. But if you're trying to do discipleship without the use of the Bible, I think you're doing it wrong. So it's both and, it's not either or. And I just have this sense that hearing God is a much more robust task than simply doing Bible study. I think it's actually listening for Him, watching for His hand. But that's a video for another day. But those are the two things I didn't walk out of seminary with. I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know how to hear God. Now, to be fair, I'm not sure that that's the seminary's primary. It's not its primary role. It's to give you some academics and theology and biblical studies, and maybe even counseling, and maybe even the pragmatics of running a church. I think there needs to be a healthy dialogue about what it is, what role the seminary plays, but I'll leave that one alone for the moment. I think discipleship is about teaching people who they are and how to hear the voice of God. So that's not a failure in the seminary, that's a failure in the church, I think. Do I think the seminary needs to bring some resources up under those two ideas? Yeah, absolutely. But the church is the place where we need to learn who we are and how to hear how God communicates to us. I think that's really important, because I've noticed that in the last, I'll say 2 years, where I've been on this journey about listening for God and learning who I was, it's different, and it's not something that I will ever regret, and I certainly don't want to go back. I want to keep moving forward with that. So I want you to think about those two things. If you got the time, if you got a journal, you may want to put it in as an entry. Who are you? Or better, here's a better question. What does God call you? What name has He given you? And then secondly is, how do you hear the voice of the Lord? How do you hear Him? How does He communicate to you? And we're gonna try to talk about this a little bit more over the next couple of days. But as you think on that today, just ask the Lord to give you clarity of thought. All right, I'm here. I'm gonna go get some coffee. Start my day. Grace and peace.